Let's go!
All right, time to pull up a chair and talk some Dynasty football. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and this is the Ride or Dynasty podcast. Tonight, I am joined by our crack team of football minds. Or is it a bunch of football minds who are on crack? Is that how you say it? Like, I am on crack? Is that what you would say, Kyle?
I would say I'm using or on. Yeah, either way.
I am using crack.
No, just using.
I'm
you don't
just
have
using.
To denote crack unless you're just really prideful about your crack use. It's up to you, man.
Anyway,
really.
So I'm joined by Kyle Allen.
I don't think
How you
there's a
doing, Kyle?
right way to do crack, honestly. I think it's...
Well, I'm sure there's a right way to do crack. I watched New Jack City.
Okay, fair enough. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
All right. My good friend, who I just had a little happy hour with the other day in person, Mr. Don Detweiler.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And, of course, our latest addition to our writing team, Blair Perez. Am I saying your last name right?
Perot, kind of like the famous Ross Perot. The silent.
Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish? That's my Ross Perot from 75 impersonation. Blair Perot is writing a great series for us on roster management and game theory. Blair, why don't you tell the riders a little bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm a teacher in my daytime job, and then I'm glad to be welcomed on to the Rider Dynasty podcast. It's a pleasure to be a part of this. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. And as a reminder, we are rolling out articles daily on our website, rideordynasty.com. Check them out. Give us a follow on Twitter at Ride or Dynasty. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our pod. If you leave a review, we will read it on air, even if you say something horrible about Kyle Allen. And of course, I meant Kyle Allen, the quarterback, not our Kyle Allen. Tonight, we are kicking off our divisional previews. But before we start, let's check out the news. All right, guys, COVID updates. Players are opting out left and right. Which players have surprised us the most? Don?
I was really surprised that the running back out of Kansas City opted out, Damian Williamson. When he left, I was thinking that he would be one of the players that's going to be playing for a contract or at least a position with their own team. With Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming in, I expected he'd want to go through take every opportunity to put good tape down and play for his next contract.
Yeah, Damian Williams opted out. Kyle, which surprised you the most?
I was pretty surprised to hear Dante Hightower was going to take the season off with the Patriots. I get it. I understand it. He has a newborn child at home. His mom has type 2 diabetes, so a lot of people important to him in his life that it could certainly affect quickly. So I understand it, but I was certainly surprised to see such a high caliber player to take the season away like that.
Yeah, a lot of teams are suffering some losses at key positions. Blair, which player do you think hurt their team the most? And of course, I'm not saying the players shouldn't have done this. I completely support any player making this decision. But which team do you think is hurt the most by a player sitting out?
Hightower's a big name. Patrick Chung is another big name. The Patriots are just losing so many players right now. Few deep dive conspiracy theories that Belichick is telling them to leave so that they can try to get Trevor Lawrence as a first overall pick. But yeah, that defense is looking decimated right now. Again,
don't doubt Bill B's ways.
Yeah, not that it's a bad thing, but I am surprised just how many of them are coming from the Patriots.
Yeah, Marcus Cannon too. I know Nate Solder for the Giants. The Vikings signed defensive tackle Michael Pierce. That was their big offseason signing. He's out. Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, the guard. Of course, he's a doctor, so he knows what he's doing. Yeah, it really seems that a lot of the older players are worried about the young guys not making wise decisions. So can't necessarily argue with that. Now, I don't know if you saw today that the Bills have sent their rookies home. I guess they had 5 positive tests, so they decided they were going to go virtual for the rest of the rookie portion. That's not a good sign. If I were to say, what's the over-under on number of games played this season? I'm setting the line at 7.5. So will they play more or less than 7.5 games? Blair?
I'm pessimistic watching baseball right now, and the Marlins, I believe, had to essentially lose 8 games coming up. The NBA is looking great with their bubble format, but it's going to be incredibly difficult to do that with the NFL. So I would love for us to be able to play a full season, but as it stands, I'm pessimistic. I'm going to take the under on 7.5.
Don?
I'm taking the over on 7.5, but I expect there to be at least one major disruption, which might include like a 2-week league stoppage to let everybody kind of reset the clock here, and then we pick things up.
Kyle?
Yeah, I'm going to take the over as well. I think Roger Goodell isn't necessarily the wisest commissioner in sports. Some friends of mine were talking about the MLB and how, as Blair alluded to, the Marlins, they have, I think it's up to like 18 players and staff that are out due to COVID right now, that the league hasn't really put a stoppage to anything. Rob Manfred in the MLB is kind of the worst commissioner in sports, and I think Roger Goodell is like Rob Manfred light. So I don't think he'll make some wise decisions. He, likes the league bringing in as much revenue as it is, and they're already going to be hurting because of no fans in the stands. So I think they're going to be pressed to try to get as much or as many games on the field as they can.
Yeah, I think if there were logical and reasonable minds making the decisions, it would be under. Yeah. But being that it's Roger Goodell and the owners, and they're not actually putting their lives on the line, it's going to be over. Even if, like Don says, they take a 2-week break in the middle of the season and just postpone this, between weeks 6 and 7, let everybody do the 2 weeks at home. They're gonna try to get in as many games as possible. And lastly, we actually just brought this up before the pod. LaShawn McCoy signing with the not the Kansas City Chiefs. Sorry, that was last year. Signing with the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Massive.
How does anybody care?
Huge deal.
Is it?
No, not even a little bit. This is nothing. He's been done for 2 or 3 years now, I think. I don't see him getting more than 50, 60 rushes this year.
He's going to be a running back coach that wears a uniform.
I see him as a stopgap. Keyshawn Vaughn has already been put in the COVID list. So I have a feeling that he will be playing the early part of the season until Vaughn gets up to speed, and he'll take those reps from Vaughn until he's ready to go.
Well, we'll definitely be talking about that in a little bit, but let's start by kicking off our divisional focus. We're starting with the NFC South this year. Let's just go through and decide who we think is going to win the division and who's coming in last. Kyle.
Sorry. I think the Saints are going to win the division this year. They kept a lot of their key players and added a second receiver for Breeze to throw to. It's been a long time since he's had a reliable second receiver out there. So adding Emmanuel Sanders, I think they'll continue to run the division. I got the Saints winning it. Panthers are going to bring up the rear. They're young. I think they're building a lot of talent, but I don't think they're there yet.
Fair enough. Don?
I agree with both of those. I've got New Orleans winning the division, and I have Carolina in last. Carolina's definitely building something, but they're just not there yet. And I think this is really the last big year for New Orleans before one of the other teams is ready to take the mantle.
Blair?
I'm going to have to agree with both those cases. The Saints are such a complete team right now. Their defense is very solid. And then Carolina had to spend 7 picks on their defense. I don't see that working out for them this year, but possibly in the future. I think they still have a long way to go before they're going to be competing.
Well, just to be contrarian, which is my normal mode of being, I think Atlanta's going to win this division. So I have them definitely winning. I think Matt Ryan, with the addition of Todd Gurley, they have a solid offense. They're getting some offensive linemen back. I think they're going to do really well this year. Last place, man, I tried to pick anybody but Carolina. I think it's either going to be Carolina or Tampa Bay.
Right.
I think there is a decent shot that Tampa Bay implodes. Tommy's not going to know what defense is called because he won't have Belichick telling him. So he's going to find that a little more difficult out of the friendly confines of New England. But yeah, I'm going to go with Atlanta and Carolina. So we all agree on Carolina. It's either the Saints or Atlanta for us. All right. So let's start with Atlanta. Kyle, you were taking a good look at Atlanta. What are we thinking about Matt Ryan?
Yeah, Matt Ryan, he's a great quarterback. I don't know if you guys took a peek at the NFL Top 100 that's been released throughout the week. The league does each year their top 100 players from the previous season. Matt Ryan, easily for me, is the biggest snub on that list. Was not even listed in the top 100. They had Ryan Tannehill at number 68. I don't know in what world Ryan Tannehill is better than Matt Ryan. I know that wasn't the question, but had to get that off my chest. It's his third.
I agree.
It's his 13th season in Atlanta. He's obviously familiar with the pieces around him. He's got a good rapport with Ridley and Julio Jones, obviously fantastic receivers. They've added a few new faces, so I think it'll be interesting to see how Todd Gurley, see how Hayden Hurst fits in. We'll talk about them a little bit in a minute. But Matt Ryan, I mean, he's primed for another great season. He's one of the pass-happiest offenses in the league, and he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league, so I don't see anything slowing him down.
Don, are you rostering any of the backup quarterbacks there?
I'm probably not. Matt Ryan is a huge history of being an absolute Iron Man, and what it may very well be a shortened season. I just don't see it in a dynasty context that you would need to roster any of those players, especially because none of them really have long-term potential value.
How old is Matt Schaub? He's got to be like 36, right?
You would think. It feels like he's been around forever.
Yeah, he's got to be old. Kyle, now looking at the running back position, Todd Gurley. I am so excited for Todd Gurley.
I'm really excited to see what he can do in Atlanta, but unfortunately I'm fading him a little bit off of a lot of people. So this segment, you asked us to give a rising/shining star, somebody we're fading, and then a sleeper. So he's my guy that I'm fading in this one. It was tough for me to pick a Falcons player that I would fade because this offense, as I said before, this offense is great. They're the only offense in the league that has 11 starters that are all former first-round picks. There's something to be said about draft capital, as we've discussed before. But I'm fading Todd Gurley. The Rams limited him to just over 250 touches last season. If I'm going to respect anybody's decision-making, it's offensive genius Sean McVay. Shout out
Trademark.
TM. Shout out Ton. They only gave Gurley just over 250 touches. I think it was like 252. The 3 seasons before that, he averaged 326. So they took away 75 touches from him, and then they ate like $20 million whenever they cut him. In free agency, he was only able to get a 1-year, $5.5 million prove-it deal. So that tells me that there's a lot of teams in the NFL that weren't interested in him because they had concerns about him. So my biggest concerns for him coming into this season is that the Falcons are going to limit his touches, which obviously is going to hurt his value, and that he's probably going to face some touchdown regression. He had 14 total last season. It's obviously going to be tough for him to maintain in that offense where there's a lot of mouths to feed. A lot of RBs going around his current ADP, like Leonard Fournette, Le'Veon Bell, and Chris Carson. And outside of Fournette, I think I would take the other two over him off of volume alone.
So I'm looking at their backups. Ito Smith, Brian Hill, Quadri Olison. Anybody stand out for you, Blair?
I actually just rostered Brian Hill in a league. I feel like he has the most talent out of the backups, and I agree with Kyle. I just don't see Gurley doing as well. I think the only positive Gurley has is that he's on a 1-year deal, and I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta just runs him into the ground. So he may be getting a lot of touches, but if he starts to wear down, I'm big on Brian Hill personally.
Very good. Don, where do you think Todd Gurley finishes the year?
In terms of total overall backs, he's going to be kind of in that high-ish end running back 2 areas, like 15 to 18 overall. He's going to get a lot of goal line carries. This offense is going to be moving up and down the field, and there's going to be short yardage and goal line opportunities galore. And we've seen in the past that he can catch the ball out of the backfield. Ryan's no stranger to doing that. I think he's got a lot of potential, but he's probably not going to crack the RB1 category.
All right, now wide receiver is arguably one of their strongest positions with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. What do you see there, Kyle?
Yeah, obviously Julio Jones is one of the best receivers in the league, if not the best. Yeah, not a whole lot to say about him. He's stellar. My only reservation for him is, for some reason, he is yet to have a season with just a ton of touchdowns. I couldn't tell you why, but he's, over the last several years, he's the heaviest targeted receiver in the league. He's consistently well over 1,000 yards. He just, for some reason, has a touchdown bug. He can't score a lot of touchdowns. He has a career high of 10. And his neighbor on the other side of the offense, Calvin Ridley, scored 10 in his rookie year, and he scored 7 last year. He missed 3 games to injury at the end of the year last year, but the Falcons were out of contention, so they weren't really trying to rush him back. He's my rising star. I love him at his current ADP. He was wide receiver 23 last year. I think he can easily break into the top 12 this year. I'm not calling that. I don't think I have him ranked there. I'm not looking at my ranks right now, but I think he's easily got the ability to do it. He's the number 2 receiver, and last year it was the heaviest pass offense, and in the past 3 years, I think it's top 4. Over the last 2 seasons, he had 185 targets, turned that into nearly 1,700 yards, scored 17 touchdowns in 2 years. I think he's only going to grow. He's yet to see 100 targets in a year, but he was at like 92 last year when he got hurt, and he missed 3 games, so I think he easily would have gone over that. I think he'll see it this year with the loss of Mohamed Sanu and Austin Hooper. There's about 140 vacated targets in that offense, and I can see a lot of them going his way.
Looking at the rest of the roster, Don, Russell Gage, Justin Hardy, Laquan Treadwell, anybody there that you're interested in?
I like Russell Gage a lot. Fast guy, a good complement to what they already have going on with the 2 studs in Jones and Ridley, and a very solid opportunity. Those guys command so much attention downfield that opens the underneath for Gage, and I think he's just going to be their wide receiver 3 and just going to be very productive.
Yeah. Gage had 74 targets last year compared to Ridley's 93. It's only a 20 target difference, and Gage is currently going as like the wide receiver 84, so not even getting drafted a lot of leagues. So definitely some value there.
I believe 66 of those were over the last 9 games after Sanu left, so he's definitely up for some good target volume. I wouldn't be surprised if he well outplays his ADP.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. Russell Gage is somebody, I believe Duncan somebody on our team wrote an article about Russell Gage and made that point about how many targets he did receive down the stretch last year. Tight end, of course, my favorite position. What do you have, Kyle?
Yeah, you're going to hate me for this because I know you're not his biggest fan, but Hayden Hurst. Hear me out, JJ.
Ugh.
Hear me out.
Go ahead.
He's my sleeper for their team. Your stipulation for sleeper for tight end was outside of the top 18 last year and could move into it this year. I think he can easily do that. I would even argue he might be in the top 12. He's been second fiddle his whole career to Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is obviously a top 5 tight end. He got hurt in his rookie season, lost the starting job then, and could never get past Mark Andrews. Top 5 tight end again. Difficult to surpass that. Atlanta targeted the tight end position 121 times last season, so there's obviously some targets to go around. He's a first-round pick formerly. He has fantastic speed. Last year he made headlines. He was the fastest Ravens player to score a touchdown at one point. He clocked in at 20.5 miles per hour on a 61-yard score. That's a lot of speed for a big man. He's the same size as Hooper. I think he's 10 pounds heavier, but they're the same height, but ran a faster 40. The team has high expectation for him. Matt Ryan's been working out with him in the offseason. He said he's one of the fastest, most athletic tight ends that he's ever played with. He said he loves his work ethic, speed, athleticism, et cetera, and said he's a mismatch problem. He's going to create separation and win in different ways than a lot of other guys do. So if your quarterback's saying that about you before he's even played a game with you, you know that he's going to target him and trust him. we'll see.
Yeah, I disagree. But I can't argue with your logic there. He should get fed targets. I'm actually a big fan. My sleeper on the team would be Jaden Graham. Tight end out of Yale, big guy. I think he's like 6'4", 240. Surprisingly athletic. They started targeting him more last year. I mean, he had 10 targets, 9 receptions, 170 some yards. But the team really likes what he brings. So look for him to establish a solid tight end 2 role in Atlanta. Guys, is there anybody else in Atlanta we want to talk about? Nope. All right.
I would like to point out that this is an even year, and I'm only being somewhat sarcastic when I say that Matt Ryan has a track record of blowing up in even years. So I like Kyle's take of Matt Ryan having a great year.
He's the San Francisco Giants of the NFL, basically. I think there's this odd years, but same thing.
I don't get that reference because I don't watch
They
baseball.
won World
All
Series
right.
in like 3 straight odd years or something.
It was
crazy,
evens as a Giants
or was
fan.
it evens? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'm not offended. It was unfortunately a while ago at this point. So
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Carolina. Carolina, yikes. Teddy Bridgewater, Will Grier, PJ Walker. I'm not excited about anybody there. Teddy Bridgewater, I thought he had a better year last year coming in for the Saints than he did. I'm not really looking forward to seeing what he does here. I don't know if he's going to last the year. I don't like Will Grier. I am a little bit excited about PJ Walker coming in after his XFL showing. I think he might have some upside, but do we think Teddy Bridgewater plays more than 10 games this year?
I think so. They
Blair?
brought him in on a 3-year deal. I think they're going to at least give him 10 games to prove himself. He did start slow with New Orleans, but his last 3 games he played there, he did start to pick it up a little bit. I'm by no means a true believer, but I think they'll at least give him a chance, a full year to see how he does.
Don?
Yeah, I think he was brought in on a 3-year contract with the intention of the first year kind of tread water, in year 2 and 3 mentor who's next. And that who's next is definitely not noodle-armed Will Grier from West Virginia or an XFLer.
Hey, come on. West Virginia quarterbacks have always made me happy, such as Geno Smith. So going to the running back position, yikes. Christian McCaffrey. Is there anything we need to say that hasn't been said about Christian McCaffrey? No, I didn't think so. I think he actually might plummet from number 1 to number 3 this year. But I don't know how you can argue with somebody who has the skills to run inside and outside, can run the full route tree as a wide receiver. He's an amazing player. Looking at the backups, I know Reggie Bonifant got a lot of backup takes. I think Mike Davis is going to supplant him this offseason and take over that second running back role. Hopefully they're going to take some carries away from Christian McCaffrey and let somebody else run the ball and get some touches. Is there anybody in the backfield that you're looking at, Kyle?
Yeah, I kind of agree with your take. I think it'll be Mike Davis as the backup, but outside of Christian McCaffrey, nobody's going to see the ball. Christian McCaffrey, as you said, fantastic runner, but he's a great pass catcher as well. I want to say outside of Michael Thomas, he is the number 1 in receptions over the past 3 years. Something. I don't remember if it was receptions or targets, but it was like Mike Thomas and then him, which is bizarre to me for a running back.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is McCaffrey.
Now,
nobody else. Yeah.
Yeah, looking at wide receivers. Now, DJ Moore, that is my rising star. He's already risen. He was wide receiver 16 last year with noodle-armed Kyle Allen throwing him the ball.
Hey.
No offense, Kyle Allen. My Kyle Allen. He's young, athletic. He's easily going to lead the Carolina wide receivers in targets. He should be right around 120 to 140. Currently, his ADP is wide receiver 9, which I'm very comfortable with. I can see him easily landing right around there, even with Teddy Bridgewater as his quarterback. Now, currently slotted as the wide receiver 2 is Curtis Samuel. Now, I'm fading Curtis Samuel. I don't know if that's shocking to say. He finished right at wide receiver 36 last year, so I'm able to fade him. Everybody was buying him last offseason, right? Curtis Samuel was going to blow up, and he didn't. His ADP is wide receiver 62, which might be a little low. He's electric with the ball in his hands, but he has a really bad catch percentage, which is holding him back. The team signed Robbie Anderson and Seth Roberts. Robbie Anderson is a big threat. Seth Roberts isn't, but he's an amazingly steady wide receiver. He's not going to see the 105 targets he saw last year. I'm expecting somewhere between 60 to 65 targets and maybe 10 carries. But the reduction in volume is definitely going to cap Curtis Samuel's ceiling. And sleeper, I actually have Robbie Anderson as my sleeper. He was wide receiver 40 last year. His current ADP is 52. And I think it's time for Robbie Anderson to finally put up or shut up. He is reunited with his college coach, Matt Rule. He has never been surrounded by as much offensive talent as he currently is. He has always been the only wide receiver option for the Jets. They had Jamison Crowder, but Crowder wasn't a downfield threat. He doesn't have to carry the offense. He just has to do what he does best, is stretch the field and catch contested balls. So I definitely think he's going to sneak in. Anybody have anything to say about those wide receivers?
Yeah, I love Robbie Anderson as a sleeper pick for you right there. I the other day saw a compilation on Twitter of him running routes absolutely wide open down the field and Sam Darnold missing him by a mile. Sorry. But, I mean, the guy can get open. The quarterback just has to hit him. So I feel like a lot of his, people are like, oh, he's not producing what he should be. Some of that is quarterback play. And I don't know if Teddy Bridgewater will help him or hurt him because he's not necessarily known for being a downfield passer. But Joe Brady's offense, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot, I think. And as you mentioned, the Temple connection with Matt Rule, somebody they're going to like in that offense.
Yeah, and if anybody can scheme Robbie Anderson open, it's Joe Brady. And once that ball's in the air, he doesn't get the recognition he should. Robbie Anderson is amazing at getting contested catches. He is able to contort his skinny little frame in crazy ways and come down with the ball. So I'm excited to see what he can do in a real offense now that he's away from my beloved Jets. Looking at the tight ends, Ian Thomas, Seth Duval, Chris Manhertz. I'm not excited about any of them. Ian Thomas has received a lot of buzz. I mean, there's a big opening with Greg Olsen being gone, but I don't see Ian Thomas having the skills to take that position over. Anybody have any thoughts on the tight end position?
Ian Thomas has flashed a bit when Olsen has been out. I think he kind of falls in that 16 to 24 range of tight ends who could sneak into the top 12, but it's so difficult to. You're just throwing darts. You're hoping that you get the right dart throw and your guy slips into the top 12. He could be that guy. He's flashed a little bit, but yeah, I agree. Definitely no guarantees there.
Yeah, he definitely looked good in 2018 when, like you said, he was filling in for Greg Olsen. But last year, he couldn't get any targets on that team. And if he's as good as we hope he is, they would have thrown him the ball. I don't know.
Agree.
I'm just not a big fan. I'm a little bit disappointed in somebody I thought would be a breakout. Anybody have anything else about the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah, I'm loving Robbie Anderson as the fit here as a wide receiver too, because it frees Curtis Samuel to be a true wide receiver 3, which is really what he is. So I think now that these guys are actually slotted in a position they belong in, they're going to be that much more efficient.
I agree. I think he definitely has more a better fit as that wide receiver 3. Is he a good slot receiver? I'm not super familiar. I haven't watched a lot of film on Curtis Samuel.
And it's difficult with DJ Moore there because he's so electric out of bunch formations and out of the middle of the field, but they can do similar things and take different positions on the route tree. So it's up to the creativity of the offensive coordinator. But yeah, he's that kind of fast, quick twitch athlete that can do that.
Awesome. Well, let's move on to the New Orleans Saints. Almost a consensus division winner, except for me, of course. Blair, tell me about Drew Brees.
So Brees is coming into his age 41 season. Historically, this is not a great situation for a quarterback to be in. I am actually using Brees as my fade this year. I just don't see how a 41-year-old can keep this going. This more has to do with myself as a 30-year-old who already has knees that sound like Rice Krispies and a back and a hip issue and has never been hit by a 300-pound lineman. I just can't see how a 41-year-old can keep this going. Last year he was starting to show signs of aging. His arm strength is starting to go a little bit. He was hurt last year. If we look at his history, Favre, it was his age 41 season where he started to fall off. Peyton, he fell off at 39. Brady is the one anomaly, and when we get to Tampa, I think Brady's going to fall off as well. I just don't see how someone at the age of 41 who's had such a long career can really live up to these expectations. Right now he's going as quarterback 8 in a lot of drafts in round 7. And I just think that that's way too early, A, to take a quarterback, but B, to be taking someone who has so many red flags. I much prefer Matt Ryan or even Matt Stafford, who are going after them in terms of ADP. So Brees is going to be my fade for this year.
Yeah, now looking at his backups, you probably won't see a more talented QB room than you'll see in New Orleans with Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston backing him up. Jameis Winston signed a 1-year deal to be there. Some people have said that Taysom Hill is the heir apparent. What do we think, Don?
I like to think that Jameis is going to get righted here in a better system with some more consistent coaching and just some kind of a better deal and a better run pass split. If it can't happen here, though, that's it. Jameis is cooked. Taysom Hill has shown some things, but he just hasn't shown any kind of passing consistency like a full game quarterback. Yeah, he's great as a gadget guy. He can do literally anything on the football field, but I don't know that he can do those things well enough to own a position.
They interestingly gave him a 2-year, $21 million deal. So someone believes in him, and I wouldn't be surprised if they start throwing him out there more, which again I think will just eat into some of Brees' numbers this year. If they paid that much money, I think they paid Jameis $7 million, so they've got so much money thrown at backup quarterbacks. I feel at that point you have to start using them, or possibly they're starting to see the writing on the wall, and Brees may be starting to fade, and they needed a couple options just in case.
All right, looking at the running back room, Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray, where are we standing with them, Blair?
So Kamara is going to be my star. I'm really going out on a limb with this one, saying that a top finisher for 3 straight years is my star, but he really has it all. 81 catches every year he's been in the league. He was apparently playing at only 75% last year. He had knee, ankle, and back issues and still put up great numbers. So I see him returning to form. I think he's also a candidate for positive touchdown regression. He 13 touchdowns in his rookie year, 19 in his sophomore, and then dropped all the way down to 6 last year. So I think we're definitely going to see some more touchdown production out of him. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's going behind guys like Derrick Henry, and I think he's definitely got way more potential than Derrick Henry in terms of how he's going to produce this year.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And I know a lot of his touchdowns came at the end of the year. He had 2, I think, in the first couple weeks, and then he had that drought where he could not find the end zone, which upset a lot of people who had them had him on their team. Latavius Murray, are you high on Latavius?
I am. That's my sleeper pick for this year. I think with Breeze starting to show his age and regress a little bit, the Saints are going to go back to that 2017 style where they ran out Kamara and Ingram and both were able to finish as top running backs that year. Murray actually finished relatively high last year as the RB 29, I believe, and he's got a lot of potential. If they do start to give him more touches, I think he can really outperform his ADP. He's going around running back 45 right now, and he did quite well when given the chance last year. Most of the guys around him, like Madison and Pollard and Henderson, really only have a shot at outperforming their ADP if the guy in front of them goes down. But I think Murray has a little bit of standalone potential if they start to go with that two-back set again. And in fact, even if Kamara does go down, the two games where Kamara went down, Murray put up 32 and 36 and 7/10 points in those two games. So if Kamara goes down, he just absolutely exploded. And even if he doesn't go down, I still think he has the chance to outperform his ADP and be a pretty solid sleeper, especially if you're going with that zero running back strategy. I personally don't like that strategy, but I think he is a great one to take if you are wanting to employ that.
Yeah, I agree. I hate zero running back. I think it's a bullshit strategy.
Especially this season with the receiver class. I mean, you could wait till the 5th round to draft the first receiver and still get, a top 15 guy easily.
If running backs are the most valuable, I don't see why you want to avoid them, but that's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Now stop it. Stop bringing in logic to a feeling fight. All right. I don't know. Does New Orleans have any wide receivers who are any good?
They have a couple. This one guy, Mike, I think his name is. He's okay. He's doing all right. But so I actually am a little worried about him this year. The history says after he had so much volume last year, I think he's going to, kind of like CMC, fall all the way down to just wide receiver 3 area.
Plummet.
Yeah, I don't see him repeating that massive season. It's almost impossible. I believe he had 185 targets last year. That's just way too much volume to be repeatable. And if Breeze does start to go down, if they start to employ 2 running backs more often, I just see him as having, a marginal amount of regression, but that could be significant for someone who had so much volume the year before and is going off the board as the wide receiver 1 in every single draft. I personally am fading him mildly just because of his price tag.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. Outside of Michael Thomas, Don, is there anybody there who you really want?
Long term, no. Short term, Emmanuel Sanders is interesting. It's interesting because it's a real opportunity here to have a guy who can be a quality wide receiver too. But long term, age is getting there, and I worry about him beyond maybe next year.
Yeah, Kyle, anybody outside of Sanders who's interesting to you?
Not really at the wide receiver position. Traquan Smith has been disappointing so far in his career. I feel like he was expected to kind of be the wide receiver 2 complement to Michael Thomas, and he's really just kind of disappointed. Kind of interesting to me is one of my favorite names in the league, and that's Lil Jordan Humphrey.
Nice.
Out of Texas.
I love Lil Jordan.
He was a beast at Texas. 6'4", 210. That's a big body, a big frame. If he can work in and get some snaps, he's somebody interesting to look at in Dynasty down the road. Emmanuel Sanders is an older receiver, and he's only there on a 2-year deal. He could potentially move up and be the number 2 receiver in New Orleans behind Michael Thomas. But this season, I think Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, and then you have Kamara coming out of the backfield as a great pass catcher as well. It's going to be tough to pick somebody at the receiver position.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. There's not a lot there. That's super interesting. Tight ends. Blair, where are we at with their tight ends?
So Jared Cook is still there. Similar situation to Sanders where he's starting to age out a little bit, in my opinion. I think he's had a lot of productive years in the past, but I don't know how great he's going to be, and I personally would be avoiding him in his ADP. He's going in the top 10 in most drafts because he is tied to Breeze, but I don't know if he's going to produce those numbers again. The only real positive he has is I believe the Saints had 2 other tight ends opt out this year because of COVID, so he maybe has less competition for his position, but I'm not seeing anything too significant out of Jared Cook this year.
Anybody else in that tight end room, Don, who you're interested in?
Down the road, I like the idea of Adam Troutman. I think he could be interesting. A 3rd-round pick this year out of a small school, but has the size, has the speed, and production out of college to be an interesting supplement to the offense down the line. But this year, with so little practice time and so few reps, it's really tough, particularly for tight ends as rookies, to really make an impact.
Yeah, and I was surprised looking at this roster overall that outside of the starters, it's so devoid of talent. It doesn't look like they have a lot of good prospects. It's a very old team. I don't know. Is that just me?
No, I'm with you there. They're win now.
Very much.
Yeah,
so. I mean, Taysom Hill can literally do everything on the football field. He may be snapping the ball to himself, passing, receiving, and running it all in the same play. You never know.
That would be impressive, but you can't actually snap to yourself. That's against the rules.
They'll have an offensive lineman stand behind him and bounce it off his chest or something.
Nice. I like that idea.
Real gadget.
All right. Well, let's finish up with, of course, Tampa Bay. Don, can you tell me why Tom Brady will finish as the QB1 this year?
Because there's nothing else there. He's going to be QB1 on that team, but Blaine Gabbert has washed out several times, and Ryan Griffin just is no challenge there. So they took their shot with Jameis, and it didn't work out, so Tom Brady is now the fill-in until they have to reinvent the wheel. He makes sense to land here because of the just stud talent they have at wide receiver. But boy, long term, I don't like it. They've got nothing behind him.
Yeah, as far as running backs, are you excited? I know there's a big debate between Rojo and Vaughn. Where are you leaning?
So I really liked Keyshawn Vaughn coming out of college. Here's a guy who's had 3 seasons of 1,000-yard plus production. One at Illinois, which you don't necessarily think of as producing high-quality running backs, and then he transfers to Vandy, and in a very tough division, continues to just outright produce. When he was drafted, Bruce Arians comes out with a quote, yeah, he's a 3-down back. BA absolutely loves guys that can stay on the field, even back to his days with Pittsburgh. He's notorious for locking in on a running back and just riding them continuously. So Vaughn has the talent, the opportunity, and the speed to really kind of fit in here and just get volume. Unfortunately, though, we're coming in now. We have a situation where the poor guy has been diagnosed with COVID. Now, we don't know if it's if he actually has it, if he's asymptomatic or anything. The league rules prevent anybody from saying. So we'll find out down the line. But in a year where it's so difficult for guys to get reps, running back is the one place where I feel like a rookie can really come in and still be effective, because running the football is still running the football. As soon as you get the vocabulary down in the offense, you can be productive. And he's coming into a place that didn't really have a solid back. My regression player, and it's not a whole lot because he was only 27th overall last year, is Ronald Jones II, only had 724 yards, and that was on 172 touches. So we're not talking about a tremendous quantity of production. So I really thought that Vaughn had the opportunity, and I think he will by the end of the season, however long that happens to be.
So Keyshawn Vaughn is your sleeper, did you say?
He is, yes.
Okay. Anybody else in that running back room who we're interested in? TJ Logan, Raymond Calais,
Shady McCoy.
Shady
Well,
McCoy.
Shady,
I'll tell
Shady
you.
now is a little interesting, yeah.
RB coach Shady
I
McCoy.
think the most popular and the best performing running back is going to be Dare Ogunbowale.
I'm so glad you said that name because I just can't.
Bless you.
Yeah, I didn't either.
But to me, you're right with him. He's a third down back coming in, and we all know how much Brady loves to throw the running backs out. And James White made a career out of it. We'll see if he can be James White 2.0.
And even more than that, they have been at every single one of Tom's non-social distance practices when he was stumbling drunk from Byron Leftwich's house. Dare has been there. He's been the only running back there. Catching passes, running reps. And if there's one thing Tom Brady loves, it's guys who show up and practice with him.
Yep, I think the best running back for fantasy on this team is going to be the one that Brady attaches himself to and takes on that James White role, and he just trusts with anything. I mean, there were games in New England where James White would get 15 targets. That's crazy for a running back, but I mean, fantasy-wise, especially PPR, it makes him super valuable. So,
yeah, especially when you look at their defense, I think Tampa Bay is going to be playing from behind a lot, or at least in shootouts. So I think he's going to be on the field. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunity to catch in the, like you said, the James White, the Kevin Falk role. Yeah, I think Dare is definitely my sleeper. Now, looking at their wide receivers, this is their strength. We have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, both of whom finished in the top 5 last year?
Yeah, top 5.
So what are you doing with those two?
Boy, it's interesting because Brady just does not have the arm that Jameis Winston does. Now, you could say that positively in that Brady's more accurate, but you could say it negatively in that he's not chucking the ball all over the yard like Jameis could. If it's one thing Jameis could do, he could throw the long ball. And Evans absolutely feasted on that. If we look at the total yards per route, so where these guys are averaging catching the ball, Godwin was catching the ball at about 10.7 yards per route. So in that short to intermediate where Brady just lives. Evans, his average targets are 15.9 and beyond. So does Brady have the arm to put the ball down the field to Evans as consistently as Jameis did? I don't know. I mean, Evans is a monster at winning jump balls and contested catches, but I feel like the wide receiver, if you had to pick one, which you will because good luck getting both, is going to be Chris Godwin. He just does that classic thing that Brady always latches onto, which is that tactician route runner in that short to intermediate game who can catch and go, and I just see him just adapting to that role and just fitting in with Brady perfectly.
Now, he isn't white. Is that an issue? Because he seems to like white wide receivers.
Well, if you want to go that road, I suppose we can talk about
Scotty Miller or Justin Watson.
Yeah, exactly. That's where
Randy Moss says hello. Deion Branch says hello.
I'm just saying, in the slot role, he seems to like those little feisty.
Yeah, Justin Watson's a bigger guy, but he can play in that position. And in the one start he had last
Justin
year,
Watson is from UPenn. He's a physical freak.
Yeah, 6'3".
I like Justin Watson.
In his one start last year, he had 5 for 43 and a touchdown. So he's kind of in that position where you would like to see him get some more opportunity.
Blair, any thoughts on Tyler Johnson getting a run here, or with the lack of training camp?
Tyler Johnson was actually the guy I was going to bring up, as especially in Dynasty, as a big pickup if you can grab him. Looked great in college in Minnesota. Big body. He slipped somewhat in the draft. There were talks early on in the season of going in the first or second round, and he slipped all the way to the 5th round. I think if he can kind of get things going, he's got a lot of potential. I think in terms of taking a flyer on a rookie in Dynasty, Tyler Johnson is one of my higher guys. One of the guys I'm higher on in terms of having some upside later on. Maybe not this year, but down the line, I think he has a lot of potential.
Awesome. Let's, Don, tell me about the tight ends.
So this is where it gets kind of interesting because we have the return of Gronk here. And if we look at Gronk's last year and compare it to the overall ratings for last year's tight ends, he would have been the tight end 11. So there's potential there. He had 682 yards and 3 TDs in the last season he played with Brady, and that was only in 13 games. So if you bump that up to a full season, you're talking on the order of 800 yards. So do I think he can do that? No, I don't. I think he'd be lucky to get the 682 in the 13 games that he had before. Guys at his age, considering the absolute beating he's taken for a career, coming back we'll see, but I wouldn't be rolling the dice on it. O.J. Howard has disappointed greatly over the course of his career, and the fact that they made room for Gronk, besides you're bowing down to Brady here, speaks to O.J. Howard and the overall lack of success he's had. I mean, Cameron Brate has almost passed him on that depth chart, and I wouldn't be overly surprised if they don't look to move Howard in the relative future here.
Gronk,
Kyle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Gronk's really interesting to me this year. I don't know if it's in a good way or a bad way. I feel like you could very easily overdraft him and take him too early and he'd be unproductive, as Don said. But he could also just go nuts. I don't see him having the big crazy yardage years like he has in the past. But I can definitely see a scenario where it's like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin are eating up all the between the 20s work, and then Rob Gronkowski has like 8 7-yard touchdowns. I would be very unsurprised if that happens. Brady has a history of targeting him in big situations, third downs where they need 3 or 4 yards in the air, red zone work. Would not surprise me at all. Brady's supported 2 tight ends in the past, so we could see Howard or Brate kind of break out as that second tight end in that system where you have 2 tight ends that are both actually fantasy relevant. So should be an interesting year for Tampa Bay's offense. I think they're going to be throwing a lot, like Don said.
Sorry, you glitched there a little bit. I couldn't hear you. So I'm just going to assume you said something wise. Yeah, Tampa Bay only ran 2 tight ends. Like I believe it was like 23% of the time. I think they are perfectly set up to run 12 personnel. You put Dare in the backfield with Gronk and O.J. Howard, Evans and Godwin out there. You're going to have a lot of mismatches. Plus, you can also run the ball very effectively. So I'll be interested to see if that if they run out of that personnel grouping a lot more frequently.
And with Brady's ability
maybe
to
get
make
that up to like
changes at
30
the
or
line,
40.
With his ability to make changes at the line, if the coaches let him, which I don't see why they wouldn't. I don't know why you wouldn't trust that guy. But with his ability to do that, I think that personnel would make them very dangerous offense.
Yeah, you don't bring him in unless you
any of
trust
those
him.
guys could split out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anybody else? Cameron Brate? Yeah, after that, there's really not a lot there.
I actually think Cameron Brate might have a better year than the other 2. I don't think Arians trusts Howard. Gronk, I don't see how you can take a year off. He lost so much muscle mass over the time that he took off. He already had issues with soft tissue injuries and all sorts of injuries throughout his career. I'm just really worried at his age coming back. I wouldn't be surprised if he barely gets on the field this year. I'm fading Gronk in almost every draft I have. And my hot take for Tampa is that if anyone does well at the tight end room there, it's going to be Brate.
It's funny that you said that because I believe Jared Clifton said that in our last pod that Cameron Brate will outscore both Gronkowski and O.J. Howard. So you're the second person to say that. I don't necessarily buy it. I've had a lot of shares of Brate in the past and he has never scored. But stranger things have happened. Anybody else on Tampa Bay?
We've covered the majority of the interesting stuff here. It's the grand experiment, right? New England South. Now we just got to see how it happens and if it happens.
I think they're about 3 years late to the game for that to really work out for them.
Yeah, they're sort of getting Brady. I mean, Kyle, you can say. I mean, Brady's past his prime, right?
For sure. I mean, I'm a New England fan, and obviously I appreciate everything Brady did in New England, but it was apparent this season he's older. He's not the same quarterback that he was, but he made it work for what he's doing. He understands he's older and he can't do the same things, and he's a very cerebral player. So I think he's still going to take advantage of his strengths. But yeah, he's definitely not in his prime. He thrives on players that know what he wants. That's why he had such a good connection with Edelman, with Gronk when he was there, because it's players that he had built a rapport with. They'd been there for a while, and they kind of knew what to expect, and he could bank on them doing certain things. So it'll be interesting to see, especially without the training camp, what kind of growing pains Tampa Bay goes through.
All right. Well, that wraps up our NFC South focus. Great job, guys. Thank you. Lots of great information. Before we go, let's throw out our tags. Let people know if you have any final thoughts and where they can find you. Kyle.
Yeah, if y'all wanna watch football this year, wear your masks, please. Yeah.
And where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @kallen_4.
All right, Don.
Yeah, I don't do the whole social media deal, so you can find me nowhere. I know I'm a dinosaur in that, but that's how it is. I'm here at Rider Dynasty. And to everyone who's drafting and listening to this, again, as we always say, you do you with your teams. These are just guides.
Absolutely. Blair.
I would appreciate if you guys check out my running series on Rider Dynasty, trying to give out some tips, some pointers on trades and how to execute those effectively in your Dynasty League. I just started Twitter exclusively for this, so you can find me at Blair Perot. That's Pierroz. Silent Z on that one. Thank you guys.
All right, and I'm at JJ Wenner. Just to echo, if you want football, wear a mask, and have fun when you're drafting. You know, that's what it's all about. Drafting a team that you love and that you can cheer for, and hopefully a team that's not going to get COVID and all go on IR. So from all of us to all of you, have a great night, be safe, and as always, boat drinks, my friends, boat drinks.